Today I'm diving into the explosive moments from the Bondi Attorney General hearing. This wasn't just a confirmation hearing, it was a showdown. Senators Josh Hawley and Eric Schmitt took the gloves off, exposing the weaponization of the Department of Justice. And Adam Schiff? He was caught once again trying to spin a narrative he couldn't control. Let's break down the moments that shook the chamber and might just reshape the 2024 political battlefield. First up, Senator Schmitt. He didn't waste any time calling out what he dubbed Trump derangement syndrome. The Democrats couldn't stop obsessing over Trump, and Schmitt made it clear the American people rejected this obsession at the ballot box. Remember, November 5th was a warning. After Biden's speech labeling MAGA Americans as threats, zombie cases against Trump magically resurfaced. Enter Jack Smith, the disgraced special prosecutor, who admitted it was unusual to go after the president's top rival. Yet, there he was staging a Mar-a-Lago raid and leaking photos. And what about Biden's own classified docs or Hunter Biden's questionable activities? The double standard is glaring.
Thank you.
I do want to say, though, that it appears as though Trump derangement syndrome is alive and well. The focus of these questions today are disturbing. I don't think my Democrat colleagues learned very much from the November 5th election. The American people rejected all this. Their obsession with President Trump didn't bode well for them electorally, and I think if they stay on this path, they'll be in a permanent minority. But that's up to
112 electoral votes, Senator.
the landslide. But that's up for them. That's up to them to decide. I do want to comment a little bit, I guess, on this newfound religion on independence from the Attorney General. I will remind my colleagues that the last three Democratic attorneys general for the United States of America were perhaps the most biased, politically biased AGs we've had in modern political history in the United States. And we've never seen anything like this. And there is a story to be told. The arc of this story begins when Joe Biden gave a speech demonizing half the country, calling them threats to the Republic, threats to democracy, these MAGA Republicans, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure President Trump ever gets back into the White House. Miraculously, these zombie cases are resurrected. And let's talk about a couple of those. You've got, of course, Jack Smith, the overzealous and disgraced special prosecutor who time and time again has been slapped down by courts for overcharging and taking an overtly political position. He, by the way, in his postmortem this week, even acknowledged that it was unusual for him to be tasked with going after the political opponent of the President of the United States. It didn't stop him, though. The Supreme Court did, thankfully. But you had Jack Smith take on these unprecedented actions. You had a raid at Mar-a-Lago, staged photos at Mar-a-Lago for boxes of documents, which, by the way, boxes of documents were in Joe Biden's garage from his Senate days. And by the way, somebody who didn't register like you did under FARA, Hunter Biden was staying in. We don't know if he's compromised or not because that investigation was dropped. And give me a break that justice was meted out fairly for Hunter Biden. It wasn't. The Department of Justice went out of its way in documents to try to get him absolved of all potential crimes in the plea deal. It was only when the judge asked questions that unwound that. And they got back to the gun charge, but then President Biden did the dirty work himself. It was always going to be Plan B. This was the worst case of lawfare we've ever seen. If this was happening in another country, our State Department will be warning us about it. It's banana republic stuff. And one of the reasons why I'm so glad that you have been put up and nominated for this position is that I think you have the ability to level set. So when the Democrats ask you questions about your independence, it is beyond ironic that we're sitting here today because of the lack of independence from Merrick Garland and Eric Holder bragging about being Obama's wingman. We heard one of my Democrat colleagues ask you the question that you're not going to pursue a case because of a name, but because of the crime. I would argue that the current Department of Justice adopted Lenin's claim, which was, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. And they did everything they could to throw President Trump in jail for the rest of his life because they didn't want to lose the ballot box. That is not what this country's about. That is not what this republic is about. But they did it. And it's up to you now to restore the integrity, and I have of that agency, of the Department of Justice, and I have full confidence that you will.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Question. Let me ask you a different simple question. The President also wants to jail Liz Cheney. Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual basis to investigate Liz Cheney? Yes or no?
Senator, that's a hypothetical, and I'm not going to answer that question.
No, it's not hypothetical. I'm asking you, sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Senator, no one
Based
has
on what
asked
you
me
know.
to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a
The
hypothetical.
President has called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate
But the President
Liz.
has
We're
called,
also
the
worried
President,
about Liz Cheney,
the
Senator.
President has
You know what
called
we
for
should
this.
be worried about?
Ms. Bondi,
The
please
crime rate
answer
in
my
California
questions.
right now
You
is
are
through
aware,
the roof.
Ms. Bondi,
Your robberies
Ms.
are
Bondi,
87%
my
higher
question-
than the national average.
My question is this.
That's what I
My
want to
question
be
is this.
focused on, Senator.
Do you have the
if I'm
power to
confirmed
say
as
no to the
Attorney
President?
General.
And what you're suggesting today by your non-answer is you don't have the independence to say no to the President. So let me ask you a different question. It also requires you, if you're going to be a good Attorney General, to be able to tell hard truths to the President. So my questions now are, can you tell hard truths to the President? So let me start with an easy truth that you could speak to the President. Can you tell us, can you tell him that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election? Can you say that? Do you have the independence to say that? Do you have the gravitas, the stature, the intestinal fortitude to say, Donald Trump, you lost the 2020 election? Can you tell us that here today?
Senator, what I can tell you is I will never play politics. You're trying to engage me in a gotcha. I
No,
won't
I'm just
do it.
asking you a simple
I
question.
won't play
If you can
politics
speak truth
with any
to
ongoing
power. So
investigation,
let me ask you another.
like you did leaking your colleague Devin Nunes's memo.
If you can't answer the question, let me ask you a different, what should be a simple truth, not a hard one. Was there massive fraud affecting the result of the 2020 election, yes or no?
Senator, I'm glad you asked that question, if you'll let me answer what I saw in Pennsylvania.
No, I asked a simple question about massive fraud.
I can only tell you what I saw in Pennsylvania.
I know you want to answer a different question, but my question is, can you tell us whether there was massive fraud affecting the results of the 2020 election, yes or no? Was there or was there not?
I can tell you what I saw when I went as an
That's
advocate
not
to the
my
campaign.
question. So you can't answer that question. You can't speak that even easy truth to us, let alone to the President. So let me ask you a different question. It will also be important that you give good advice to the President. Are you prepared to advise the President not to pardon people who beat police officers?
Senator, as I said, the pardons are at the direction of the President. We will look and we will advise. I will look at every case on a case.
so you
Let me
look at-
finish. On a case-by-case basis.
Okay, good.
And I abhor violence to police officers.
Follow up with that. So will it be your advice to the President, Mr. President, I know you said you want to issue hundreds of pardons on day one. Will it be your advice to the President? No, Mr. President, I need to go over them on a case-by-case basis. Do not issue blanket pardons. Will that be your advice to the President?
Senator, I have not looked at any of those files. If confirmed, I will look at the files
And
for
will
the
you be able to
pardons, as well
will
as
you
the
be able to
ongoing
review
investigation.
hundreds of cases on day one?
I will look at every file I am
Of course you
asked to
won't.
look
So
at.
will you advise the
Hey,
President?
can I
will
answer
you-
the question?
Well, my question
I
is.
would have plenty of staff. You said, of course you want.
You'll be able to review
Listen, I'm
hundreds
not
of
going to
cases on the first day?
mislead this body nor you.
All right, let me ask another question. You don't want to answer that. Let me ask
You
another
were
question.
censured by
It will
Congress, Senator, for
it will
comments just like this that
it
are
will
so reckless.
It will also be important for you to be able to preserve the records, the evidence of the department. Are you ready to commit that none of the evidence in the January 6th investigation will be destroyed under your watch?
Senator, I will follow the law. I will consult with ethical officials in the
Do you
department.
see any ethical basis to destroy evidence in the January 6th investigation? Then why can't you answer the question? Why can't you say, I commit to this committee, we will never destroy the evidence in the January 6th investigation? Why can't you give this committee and the American people that assurance?
Are you frightened because evidence was destroyed against President Trump that was false? Is that why you're
Why do
frightened
you
now?
have
I can't
difficulty?
believe this is even.
Why do you have difficulty answering that question?
I can't believe
Why do you
you're
have
asking such a
difficulty?
question.
Why do you have difficulty promising to preserve evidence at the Department of Justice? Why is that a difficult question?
I will follow the law.
It shouldn't be a difficult question.
Be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. one of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say, I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that. You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable, unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights, and we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI Director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I am confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides, that this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here, Mike.
Schmitt and Hawley revealed an actual FBI memo detailing plans to infiltrate Catholic churches. Yes, you heard that right, choirs and pews. The DOJ lied to Congress about it. Schmitt asked Bondi if she'd investigate this, and while she said yes, we need more than just words. What we witnessed in that hearing could be the beginning of a shift in power and accountability. Hawley and Schmitt didn't just make headlines, they held the DOJ's feet to the fire. Schiff tried to deflect, but the spotlight was too hot. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay informed, stay bold, and never stop asking the tough questions.